Fast am I, good afternoon. Welcome along to Manx Radio's Mannin Line on, let's be honest, it's a bit of a dreich day, isn't it, out there? It's definitely one for staying indoors, but we have got a lovely weekend ahead, which is something to look forward to. Now, it's an open line through until 1 o'clock today. What would you like to talk about? Well, you heard in the news there that despite the amendments that were passed this week to the island's assisted dying legislation, one campaigner has instructed lawyers to start legal proceedings against the government because he believes the laws would be in breach of the European Convention on Human Rights. What do you think? And also, after years of accepting the budget en masse, in future we might actually find out what's in the government budget before Timwell members debate it. So actually, there's going to be more of a say. It's not going to be Treasury saying, here's your budget, take it or leave it. Well, if you want to have a chinwag about that, please do get in touch, or anything else that is in the news that might be getting your go. Or if you think what's happening in the UK political system with Andy Burnham winning that by-election, if it triggers a leadership contest and it turns out that they get Prime Minister Burnham over there, what will that mean for the Isle of Man? Now, if you turn back the clock, of course, in his last stint in Parliament, Andy Burnham was the name that was ringing around the halls of power when we were talking about the reciprocal health agreement with the UK, wasn't it? So I'll be interested in your opinions on that and any other topic. You know what to do. You can text a comment, 166 177, or you can WhatsApp a comment, 166 177. But, of course, the best way to get in touch with Mannin Line is to have a good old chinwag and give me a call on 66 13 68. Andrew's on nice and early. Hello, Andrew. How are you?
Hi there, Alex. Please, Andy was on yesterday and he did mention Liverpool Ferry Terminal.
Yes.
And the costs. And I then was reading a social media post by Mr. Al Crane,
yep,
as his freedom of information. The information he's brought about, say, the running costs being $700,000 a year, dredging costs, I think 400,000 comes to mind, etc. And what I'm wondering is there any knowledgeable listener who can come on and tell us, would it be, they can't tell us how much it's cost due to ongoing legal action for recovery, right? So what I'm wondering is there any knowledgeable listener who can come on and tell us, would it be sub judice for government to tell the people what amount they're trying to recover, and B, what amount it's cost to date for these legal proceedings to recover X amount?
And for Andrew, from your perspective, what would be the point of that? Because if we're ahead of any legal action and everything else like this, because in terms of it being discussed in the media, there are strict laws in terms of what we can and can't discuss, because it does have an effect on any sort of legal case.
Yeah,
and so, what would be the advantage of what would be the advantage? My question is, what would be the advantage of finding out beforehand rather than following the verdict?
Well, we know, don't we, from experience, how government will just run off spending money. Now, if the claim was for, say, £1 million and they've already spent £750,000 on legal costs, hello, where's the line going to be drawn?
It's a good question. I would have imagined that the department would have taken legal advice from the Attorney General's office before going into recovering this money, yeah.
And the Attorney General's office, they're just quite happy to keep doing stuff because they're always going to be paid.
Well, that's the civil service mantra, full stop, isn't
exactly.
it? Yeah. If you're in the private sector, it's very different.
Exactly. So why can we not see what these figures are, and then the public can make it their own judgment? Are we wasting money here trying to recover something, or should we just cut our losses and say that's it? That's all, really. Thanks, Alex.
Okay,
cheers.
Thanks, Andrew. What he's referring to there, just to bring you up to speed on that, is that, yes, there's a gentleman called Alf Kane, who is a self-styled freedom of information campaigner, and that has gone digging through the figures of the Liverpool Ferry Terminal. Now, we all know it's rumoured that the total cost is, somewhere around the £100 million mark. However, that has not been confirmed, and it has been stated that the government is taking legal action, effectively, against some of the contractors in order to recoup some of that money from the construction costs. But annual operating costs were quoted online as 710,000. Dredging costs 239,000 out of that. Further dredging costs are expected. Well, in fairness, there is going to be dredging cost. In fact, part of the problem in Douglas Harbour, you can't complain that people are going to pay for dredging costs. That's maintenance. Okay, so if you want to get your knickers in a twist about maintenance, please do. But part of the complaint we keep on having about Douglas Harbour that it hasn't been properly maintained and properly dredged, and now it's not deep enough. So that dredging costs, that's not, I suppose, particularly surprising. And one of the things that Mr. Kane states in his post is that the steam packet currently operates the terminal under a peppercorn licence. Well, I suppose if the steam packet is government-owned and the port is government-owned, it doesn't really matter how much money you charge them. It's circular, really, economics, isn't it, really? It's taking from your left hand and paying to your right hand. But I see your point. Thank you very much for that, Andrew, and bringing it to our attention. Chris is on the line. You can call me, of course, 66 13 68 if you've got any comments on what we're talking about. And he wants to talk about the Northern Civic Amenity site. Hello, Chris.
Oh, Alex, yes. I'm a ratepayer in the north of the island, and I'm rather disappointed. At the moment, the civic amenity site in the north, you can't use the reused area. Now, they're going to have a trial on a Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday next month. But my thoughts are, if you're going to have a trial, wouldn't you have it on a Friday, Saturday and Sunday when most people will be there using it? So otherwise, what's the point of having a midweek trial when people are at work? Bit poor. I've emailed the MHK, Tim Crookall, twice now, asking for a copy of the contract, because I believe that it's in the contract that the reused garages should be open. Now, if they're open and it's in the contract, let's have them open. If it's not in the contract, then fine, let's have this trial. But, and why can't Mr. Crookall reply back to my emails? That's really bad on his part, I think. And I think it's really a shame that these reuse centres are not open. There's a lot of good stuff goes into the skips there, which is a real shame. I've also suggested to Mr. Crookall, but no reply, that there's a big sign put outside the reuse centre saying that we're having this trial, and it's going to be on Tuesday, Wednesdays and Thursdays. But, I just don't get any reply, so I'm not getting anywhere further forward. And I just don't think the people of the north of the island are aware of this trial of the reused garages, which is a big shame. I just think it should be known, it should be known and announced and advertised, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, in terms of, there was a story that we did today about the new Ramsey Commissioner, and one of his things, he says, is that the North is neglected by government. Do you think Mr. Crookall will be a bit more responsive if the civic amenity site was on his patch and it counted towards his votes?
Possibly, yes. I think you're absolutely right there, yeah. Because, I don't get any replies. I've got another friend who's also emailed Mr. Crookall. I don't know if he's got replies yet at all, but it is a bit bad. We've got an excellent centre there. Also, Mr. Crookall said, which I think is really amusing, that it's taken quite a long time to get the garages ready for the reuse. The garages were always there. How has it taken months and months? What work has actually been done throughout them months to reopen the reuse centre? How could you spend months on preparing two garages, Alex? It's just an absolute joke, isn't it? And it's a terrible asset to the north of the island, which is not being used.
I mean, the reuse garage, to me, always sounds like a no-brainer, because in the world of recycling and trying not to have a complete throwaway society, it's a case of, I don't need this anymore, but someone else could make use of it.
You're absolutely right. And, I mean, I do go to the reuse centre quite often, or the civic amenity site, should I say. I mean, I call it the skips. So I go to the skips quite often with cardboard and all sorts of things. There's no longer a paint bin there, so you can't put your paint in or take any paint out, where there might be half a tin that's useful to somebody. There used to be, or there still is, the cage there for the reused wood. Well, the wood doesn't go in there, so you can't get the wood for your wood-burning stove or whatever you might want, because it's no longer there. It really is terrible. And my thoughts are, I don't know, it's just my opinion, I don't run the place, but surely for every ton of waste that you can give away to the public, wood, paint, or the reused garages, surely that's a bonus for the company that's running it, because isn't it expensive to get rid of waste in tonnage?
Yes, you do have to pay waste charges, and especially stuff that goes to the incinerator, of course. So, yeah, I'd imagine
exactly.
if you can get rid of the stuff for free, it's better on their bottom line, isn't it?
I would have thought so, but, and I'm really disappointed with Mr. Crookall not getting back in touch with me.
When did you contact him, Chris? Because I do know he was absent from Tynwald this week for personal reasons. So this week we might give him a bit of a leeway off. Well,
it was this week. It was about 4 days ago.
Okay.
But what I will say is at the bottom of the email of Mr. Crookall's, it says if you don't get a reply, send it to this other department. So I sent it there as well. So, everybody's got it and nobody's replying, not even his secretary or the other department's secretary. I'm
a bit old-fashioned like that, Chris. I find it rude if I just get an autoresponder and no one at least sends an email saying, thank you for your email and this is an acknowledgement. That's normally just polite manners, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
The very first email, I got an automated reply. The second one, I didn't get any reply whatsoever. But yes, I'm disappointed as well that no reply whatsoever. Even from his secretary, it would be a reasonable thing to reply, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Okay. Well, do keep us in touch and let us know how the trial goes if you're up there, and do give us a report back here on the Mannin Line.
Yeah, I will, if we're told anything, but, I can't get any information, so yes. And, the world needs to know, the North needs to know that this trial is going ahead next month, Tuesday, Wednesdays and Thursdays, and then people at work, hard luck.
Good point, yeah. All right, thanks Chris. Thanks for your call, lovely to speak to you. Chris talking about the Northern Civic Amenity Site. It used to be, I'm going back to my childhood here. Yeah, that was when went with Dad to the tip on a Sunday. That was when it was at the Point of Air many, many years ago. Thank you very much, Chris. Have you got any comments on that, or any more? Have you got views on the Northern Civic Amenity Site and the news service up there? Do get in touch. 66 13 68 is the number to call. I would love to hear from you. A couple of your messages coming in. Alan's been on saying, I do worry that the assisted dying bill is a step towards older people without families being pressured into ending their lives. These people have paid taxes all their lives as well. And there was a comment, I think, similarly in terms of funding it that was said by a campaigner the other day in terms of how is it going to work? Is it going to be practically done through the NHS, which is 100% taxpayer funded, and then compared to palliative care, such as hospice, which is not 100% funded by taxpayers and maybe should be? Who knows? I mean, these are the debates and the arguments to have. I'd love to hear your opinions on it, of course. 66 13 68. And thank you very much to Texter 960. This is quite a big one. It says, it was a little concerning listening to the programme with the sixth formers and their being so dismissive of AI. I recently read a report from the US Bureau of Labour Statistics which listed that jobs under threat in the next 5 to 10 years from AI. The Bureau listed careers that would be partially affected by AI and those that would be completely replaced by it. The list is comprehensive. Here are just a few. Computer occupations, business and financial operations and occupations, architecture and engineering occupations, banking and administration, and the list goes on. There is an iceberg in the form of redundancies on the horizon, and it's called AI. We're extremely lucky to live on an island where our government, even though it hasn't mentioned it, will be fully aware of the threat and will have had marvellous contingency plans for such an event. I detect some sarcasm there. Maybe the people made redundant by AI could relay the rest of the horse tram track. It would keep them busy, if nothing else. Good point, 960. The AI debate rages on, isn't it? Because there is a fear of it taking jobs, and it's a very convenient tool. But it's a similar argument that's been had down the ages as more automation comes along. In terms of, I can see lots of gas street lighters standing there not wanting electricity. I can imagine lots of people here who still insist on doing their daily shopping from the mixture of the grocer, the baker, and the butcher. No, they go to supermarkets. There is always a change in society. Not all of us sit there and have washing day on a Sunday, cleaning our clothes in tubs on a washboard. No, we use washing machines and tumble dryers, new dishwashers, automation and technology that has taken over the jobs of people as time's gone on. Now, the question is, what new jobs do people go into? Otherwise, you're going to have a massive amount of redundancy, as Texter 960 says. And John has been on saying, why are we still listening to anything Dr. Allenson says? Hasn't he taken up enough of Tim Wool's time over the last 5 years? He'll no longer be in MHK come September anyway. Well, he's still in MHK, and he's, depending on what story we're covering, if it's the assisted dying legislation, it was his private member's bill, so that's why you're still hearing from him. So thank you very much for that one. Julian has been waiting patiently on the line. Hello, Julian. Lovely day.
Oh, Alex, I tell you, we need some global boiling. It's 28 Celsius and sunny in London. Just send it up here.
Yeah. Do you know what? We're getting 22 degrees Celsius on Sunday, so, we're grateful for small mercies.
Yeah, it's in the post. I think tomorrow's supposed to be nice. So hopefully the guys doing the parish will, they'll won't be too hot on that.
I was going to say, if you heard John Moss this morning, the Vaseline on the nipples is the big thing for tomorrow, apparently. If you didn't hear breakfast this morning, it's worth going back and listening to.
Right, okay. That's interesting information there.
Anyway, what would you like to talk about?
A news article on 3FM's website. Would-be MHKs asked to sign Pride Pledge. It's as interesting considering that they're talking about legislation changes and all this type of thing, which is an unknown, and yet they can't talk about more vanning wind farms. But anyway, I noticed several MHKs, including Michelle Hayward and Joni Farragher, have signed up to the pledge. I'm just curious to look at what the actual pledge says. And the first part is engaging with the community on legislation that will affect us. I'm curious to know what that legislation is, especially considering that the Isle of Man Equality Act of 2017 gives protected characteristics for gender reassignment, sex and sexual orientation. And part 2 of the pledge asks the would-be candidate to commit to promoting the development of legislation that protects the LGBTQ plus community. So the same again, we already have the Equality Act, and I'm curious to know what rights the LGBTQ community don't have that everyone else has. I thought, well, we were all sort of pretty equal on that. Part 3, introducing LGBTQ plus education across our island schools and educational settings. Be interested to know what the details of that is. And finally, Part 4 states, we are currently in discussions over the future of LGBTQ plus healthcare on the island, including the development of a clear gender pathway. What exactly is a clear gender pathway in terms of healthcare, Alex? What would that be?
Well, these are the questions that the MHKs who take the Pride Pledge will have to ask. And not only that, if those MHKs, or potential MHKs, of course, because we're talking about the election here, if they are standing and have accepted the Pride Pledge, they will have to answer those questions to their electorate, because it's like anything else in terms of a pledge at an election. It's a statement. I mean, I'm going through a lot of manifestos at the moment for work. There's lots of statements, and then you have to ask the question to dig down into the detail to see whether you want to support them on that or not.
Yeah, I mean, kids are naive and they're easily influenced. And this raises another question when you mention the word influence, because if these life-changing choices are being promoted to kids on the Isle of Man in, what did it say, educational settings, how is it that can coexist with this talk about that they're not mature enough until the age of 16 to engage with social media? I don't understand how the two... If you're not old enough to go on TikTok, how can you make life-changing decisions about what happens to your body. I don't quite understand how those two things can coexist at the same time.
Well, once again, there's an element of filling in the gaps here, isn't there? Because, as you say, these are statements, and I've got the pledge in front of me. These are statements that don't go into full detail. So, for argument's sake, when it says commit to introducing truly inclusive LGBTQ education across our island schools, it doesn't say from what age. So that our schools, unlike the United Kingdom, of course, our schools go up to A level. Which means, plus 16. So it could be at any point the devil will be in the detail, as it were. So this is where, if you've got an MHK that's taking the Pride Pledge, you want to ask them. You ask them these questions. And I would presume that before any MHK takes a pledge on what platform they're going to stand on, they will have asked these questions and have the answers.
Well, I seem to remember Ollie Pike, he does LGBTQ books, and I seem to remember Manx Radio a couple of years ago was mentioning that those books have been distributed to every primary school in the UK and across the entire Isle of Man. So I think that answers the question as to how the age demographic that's been reached by this. But I find it curious that we've already got the Equality Act, which has specific defences and protections for just these things. Why do we need to be getting people to pledge to increasing legislation? And I'd just like to have this sentence, development of a clear gender pathway in terms of healthcare for the kids. I think that needs clarification. Exactly what does that mean?
Just to clarify, it doesn't say a clear gender pathway for kids. It just says a clear gender pathway.
For healthcare, rather.
Yes, for healthcare, not for children. So, once again, these are all valid questions to ask, and in fairness, this is what people do at elections. They stand for the values of which values and different pledges they want to represent, and then the electorate questions them on them. So, if you have a prospective MHK who knocks at your door and either says they've taken the Pride Pledge, or it states in here that they will wear an Isle of Pride pin when they're going out canvassing, you can ask them these questions and you will get the answers, because it says here that the first pledge, commit to engaging with the community on legislation that will affect us. And well, quite frankly, that's a standard line you'd want, quite frankly, from any MHK on any topic, surely, is that if legislation is going to affect you, you want to have your say and be able to lobby your MHK with your views on whatever legislation, surely.
Yeah, but I mean, there seems to be a line between acceptance and promotion. I mean, I'll accept anybody's choices, absolutely great. But when you're promoting and pushing it onto people, that's different. And I just get the feeling that the language here is becoming somewhat divisive, where you're insisting on engaging with the community on legislation that will affect us, commit to protecting and promoting the development of legislation that protects the island's LGBTQ community. Protection from what? I don't see that there's any major issues. Most people are very accepting on this island. But I'm not sure about drawing that line that when you start promoting this stuff in schools. This needs to be looked at very carefully. And, if there are prospective candidates and MHKs that are doing this pledge, we need to get a very clear understanding of what these four parts of the pledge really, what they mean for the future. What is this going to mean for our kids in the future?
Yeah, and in terms of the fifth part of the pledge, it says, we ask you to commit to being an ally. Now, I'm not sure that is any standing member, when they're actually voted in, are they allowed to be an ally to any cause in particular? They can take a view on it and they can support it, but I'm not sure how, in terms of affecting legislation, they're allowed to ally themselves with it. But all of these, Julian, are genuine questions that feed into an election debate. So if there are candidates that have taken this pledge, these are the answers that they have to give to the people who they want votes for. And as is right in a democracy, people will either agree with them or disagree with them at the ballot box.
But doesn't the word ally kind of signify that there are two sides to this? If you've got an ally, that's against someone else. We shouldn't be against anyone. Everyone should be accepted.
That's a very good point.
I don't get this. Yeah, I mean, allies. I mean, World War II, the Allies. We were against someone else. So
Yeah.
I don't know. The language just seems, when you kind of sit back and just think about what's being said, it sounds kind of divisive to me. I think everyone should be accepting, but I don't think people should be promoting and pushing stuff either. There is a balance to be had.
Okay. Well, thank
Anyway,
you, Julian.
thanks, Alex.
Thanks for bringing that to our attention. Much appreciated. There, do you agree with Julian there? Is the wording of the pledge divisive, and that we've been pushing for many, many years in Western society for a case of to be accepting to all. Okay, all creeds, all colours, all race, religion, sexual orientation, the whole lot is the fact that you just value the person. So I'm interested in your views, and I know it's going to be an emotional one as well. Right, let's. I'll tell you what. We'll go straight to Jay just after this.
Assisted dying moved a bit closer in June Tynwald. Despite neither Tynwald nor the public knowing why royal assent wasn't granted, amendments were moved which, according to the Attorney General, were all that's needed to get the green light from the UK. Council of Ministers received 2 bloody noses from members on budget reform and dyslexia, and there was yet another horse tram debate. A pre-election bumper Tynwald special on Perspective this Sunday at 12 on Manx Radio with me, Phil Gorn. For those of you hoping for unbridled support for the Douglas Bay Tramway, the good news is they agreed to discuss it all again next month.
Heating oil for homes, powering farms and businesses, keeping you moving with petrol stations across the island. Ellen Mannin Fuels. Call us on 844000.
Jeffrey, that suit looks terrible. The sleeves are far too long and it doesn't button up in the middle. You need made to measure.
Made to measure? See if I could afford that.
You didn't complain when Spectrum made all our bespoke windows.
That was different. At Spectrum, you get a bespoke service at an off-the-shelf price, whether you choose quality PVC or aluminium.
Visit Spectrum Windows, the showroom, Derby Road, Ramsey, or call 817777.
North Quay Live presents the Jazz and Blues Festival on Saturday 27th of June from noon on the quayside in Douglas, raising money for the hospice and RNLI. It's free entry with live music, face painting and other family-friendly activities. North Quay Live, Saturday 27th of June.
Scrap metal coming out of your ears? Then there's only one place to call, Castains Scrap Metal, of course. Castains pay top prices for lead, brass, copper, aluminium and stainless steel, as well as ferrous metals, scrap vehicles, and they're even licensed to scrap lead-acid batteries. Drop it off today, or Castains can come and take it away. Castains Scrap Metal, Foxtel Road, call 801 337.
It's time to salute our armed forces and service families, and have fun too. Saturday the 20th of June is Armed Forces Day at the Villa Marina Gardens. With fairground rides, veterans charity stalls, military stands and more between 1 and 5 p.m, there's also free afternoon tea for everybody. Armed Forces Day, Saturday, June 20th. Open to all and entries free. Show your support for our forces, past and present.
Manx Radio!
It's Manx Radio's Mannin Line for Friday afternoon, just gone 12:30. Alex with you through until 1 o'clock. I think it's a texter 352 who says, can somebody check the wording of the horse tram track installation? The government keeps talking about wanting the horse trams tracks installed between the War Memorial and the Sea Terminal. Shouldn't it be from the bottom of Broadway to the Sea Terminal? I'm one for crossing T's and dotting I's. Are they going to install the tracks literally from the War Memorial and say, well, that's what we quoted for? It would be very Isle of Man to do so, wouldn't it? To have one section of track and then a gap in the middle and then no section of track. You'd hope so. The comical part is they don't go as far as the Sea Terminal. They actually go to the bottleneck car park. They used to go to the Sea Terminal. Do you remember? They used to go to the side of the Sea Terminal and down there. That would be wonderful for cruise ship passengers. I have a funny feeling the rails are still under there. They just tarmacked over them for a DOI car park on the side of the Victoria Pier. But yeah, would make even more sense for them to just go a little bit further and pick up the cruise passengers. I'd love that, going on a cruise, get straight off and, oh, look, there's a little tramway waiting for me to take me wherever I want to go. But there's a thought. Right, Jay has been waiting patiently on the line. Good afternoon, Jay.
Good afternoon, how are you?
I'm not so bad. How are you, sir?
I'm okay, thank you. Yes, I'm an Evri courier on the Isle of Man.
Okay.
And I'm sure you've seen the news published probably a few weeks ago now, that the Isle of Man Post Office is set to take over delivering everyone's Evri parcels on the Isle of Man at some point later this year.
Mm-hmm.
There are 44 Evri couriers on the Isle of Man that are all self-employed individuals, and we choose to do this work not because it pays the best by any means, but because it's a lifestyle choice of work. You know, and people have childcare commitments. They may have their own ongoing health issues or family members that require some care.
It gives you flexibility, doesn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. And one thing that has become apparent to the 44 couriers on the Isle of Man is that people are quite stressed and concerned because there's actually very few job prospects for people looking for that type of work on the Isle of Man. If you want to go and work full-time in an office in Douglas or some shift work somewhere, then sure, there's things out there.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want flexibility, which this type of work offers, there isn't actually much, if anything, doing. And my main issue is the Isle of Man Post Office is obviously owned by the Isle of Man government.
Yeah.
It's a bit like steam packets. I think they treat it as an arm's length type operation, but you've got Stu Peters as an MHK who's chairman of the post office.
Yes, yes, yes.
If I'm not mistaken, the Isle of Man Post Office last year made in excess of £3 million profit,
mm-hmm.
and is paying dividends to the Treasury.
Yeah.
And whilst we as Evri Couriers actually haven't been told anything officially yet, multiple posties that we speak to while we're all out working tell us they've been told it, they've been getting this and that there's potentially only going to be 6 new jobs created at the Isle of Man Post Office as a result of this.
Mm.
And for a majority of the Evri couriers on the island, it actually won't work for them. It's too rigid. The shift patterns don't work. Working most weekends won't work for them, for example. Is it right and fair for a business owned by the Isle of Man government to be pursuing these types of activities and competing against the private sector and actually putting Manx people out of work?
It's a very good question, and I'm sure that people on both sides of the argument would probably defend it fiercely. That in a similar way, as you said there with the steam packet, that the government has these operations of which they expect to return on. Because obviously, I'm sure you're aware, a number of years ago, the post office was losing money, and because let's be honest, we don't all send a lot of letters anymore, but parcels, and thanks to the wonderful world of Amazon and Mr. Bezos, that's where the money now is in delivery. And I would presume, looking from the outside, that the post office has rejigged itself in order to make money in that arena, which is why it's obviously aggressively gone to get the Evri contract. And I mean, obviously, my opinion doesn't really matter, but it's the same thing with the steam packet. They're expecting dividends and returns on purchasing the steam packet in terms of profits. Now, they could actually run the steam packet at a near non-profit making organisation and cut the cost to all of us in travel. However, the government is seeing it as an investment to make money. So the difficulty is that whether the post office themselves are making money for government, which in theory is paying for all of our services and health and everything else that it needs to do, or it should sit back and let the private sector do it, but you won't get as much income from government. And I don't know if anyone's got the right and proper answer, which I'm afraid is possibly something you're wanting.
Yeah, I mean the big challenge is that you have 44 individuals that deliver parcels for Evri across the Isle of Man at the minute. Mm-hmm. They're all paying taxation into the system.
Yeah.
The likely net outcome of this now is that you'll have a considerable number of people that actually are going to need and seek support from the government financially as a result of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have this. I mean, obviously, it's an emotive topic because I, like the others, are in the middle of it all. But yeah. I wholly disagree with the concept of government competing against the private sector and taking business away from the private sector. We all know that parcels is the future for the post office. They spent millions of pounds on the new sortation machine, which I think can probably handle 1 billion parcels a year.
Wow.
But
yeah,
it's not like the post office is currently losing money. In fact, far from it. And it is, they all openly admit that they're switching to a parcel-focused business, which makes a lot of sense. But the concept of anything owned by the government, which should be just a core public service, competing with the private sector and putting people out of work as a result. Whilst I may be in the middle of it, that just doesn't sit right with me, and I'm not sure about how it would sit with other people. Many of us have spoken to our MHKs, who I think the answer you get back kind of depends what their appetite is for re-election. I think the challenge that came back from my MHK, he was quite clear. He said the problem you've got is that he's been to try and ask Stu Peters about it. He's obviously chairman of the post office, but Stu Peters isn't standing for re-election and just doesn't care. And that was the response I got back from my MHK.
Okay. Well, no. I mean, thank you very much for sharing it with us, Jay, because I sympathise with your personal situation on that. In terms of the Evri contract, was that negotiated locally, or are you guys effectively employed by Evri from a head office somewhere? Is it that there's not like a local representative who's been negotiating this contract?
No. So every courier is a self-employed individual. We are all self-employed.
Yep.
And there was previously a local manager on the Isle of Man who got made redundant a couple of months back. So there's actually no local management at all. But the way the contract currently works is that Manx Independent Carriers rent a warehouse to Evri based in Snugborough. Manx Independent Carriers, they get paid for bringing the work over. They get paid for sorting the parcels every evening.
Yep.
So there'll be lost revenue from Manx Independent Carriers' side if this goes ahead.
Right, okay, yeah.
And then you've got the 44 self-employed couriers. There's around 11 individuals that work on the sort for the Evri work every evening for anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. They're going to be impacted on top of the couriers as well. So not only does this impact the 44 self-employed individuals, it actually also impacts the private sector businesses, i.e. Manx Independent Carriers.
Yeah, it spreads out. It's like the economic effect, isn't it? Yeah, so... well, thank you very much for bringing that to our attention, Joe. I do wish you all the best on a personal level, and we'll see if anyone else can chime in with some further information on the state of that contract being switched over. So thank you very much for your call.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye. That's Jay there, obviously facing redundancy because of the post office taking that contract. And actually, David's on, and he wants to talk about Evri and anti-competitive practices. David, hello.
Hi, Alex. It was like manna from heaven. Do you remember some years ago when I was in the Office of Fair Trading, and we actually took the post office for an anti-competitive practice? And that was over printing, where the rules and regulations are, if a government department it doesn't cost them anything for staff or pension rights or whatever, and they're running a so-called business on top of that, it becomes an anti-competitive practice because all the costs are generated by government and absorbed by the government as a whole, but the post office get the benefit of it. And then, hey-ho, they get, the guy said 3 million, it probably was more than 3 million, they get back to the kitty. But they don't realise, like they've done with the post office now, killed everything in the post office around the island there. We're not getting any service from it, are we?
Well,
that's the way I look at it. But the problem the man's got, I'm not a lawyer, but because they're all individual contracts,
yeah,
and maybe a lawyer would look at it for a small fee, or just look at it as an exercise there. Or some of these younger lawyers would look at that to say, is that in the terms of an anti-competitive practice? I would say yes. And the other anti-competitive practice was years ago, well, it still is the buses. Do you remember? Tours was wanting to run kids to school and backwards and forwards and whatever. And then the DOI then bought a load of Mercedes buses. Remember them?
Oh, yes. Yeah, well, we still got them, haven't we?
Yeah, we still got them. And there was a rumour that they were going to sell them. So I don't know whether that's happening or whatever they're going to do. But we're coming up to the school holidays shortly there. And all those grey buses will be sitting in each individual school around the Isle of Man. There'll be at least 2 of them at St. Ninians. and maybe one up at Birmingham School there.
The only thing is with this, David, and this falls into a lot of the problems that I know you and I have discussed before about the state of the island and how nothing gets maintained, is that after the VAT bombshell, we seem to have gone down the route of contracting everything out because it saves government money to the private sector. And then you realise that contracting out is actually more expensive. And then when you haven't got the money, because it is more expensive, because you're giving it to other people to make a profit on top of the service they're offering. So then you haven't got the money to keep on paying these contractors, which means you get less service as time goes on. So the question is that on a long-term basis, are a number of services... and I'm not necessarily saying in terms of the post office, but number of services, is it more beneficial on the cost to run things in-house, as it were, than it is to contract it out to someone who's going to make a profit on it?
Well, the same thing with the nurses. Remember when they contracted out to agencies?
Yep.
And then they stumble on the bright idea. It's cheaper and have a workforce in-house.
Mm.
And that's the way to look at it.
Yeah.
Because every individual that's employed by government is paying tax and insurance, aren't they?
Yeah. No, that's true.
So
yep.
we're getting an extra benefit when they get older.
Yep.
All
right, David.
Bye.
Lovely
Bye.
to speak to you.
Bye.
Cheers, mate. Thanks very much. David Quirk there giving me a bit of an insight in terms of the Office of Fair Trading. I can't imagine he's making much electricity today. And thank you very much to my producer, Chris, for giving me a bit of insight into the anti-competitive practices. The Isle of Man does have a competition law. The legislation is the Competition Act from 1992. It's overseen by the Isle of Man Office of Fair Trading. And government-owned bodies are not automatically exempt from competition scrutiny simply because they're public owned. However, whether a particular arrangement is anti-competitive would depend on the details, obviously. For example, whether competitors were excluded unfairly, whether public subsidies distorted the market, or whether procurement and contracting processes were conducted properly. Based on the information available, there's no official finding or public ruling that any proposed Evri post office arrangement breaches any Isle of Man competition law. And there's no investigation currently by the Office of Fair Trading or any other regulator. So thank you very much for that information there. Let's go to the phones. Stephen's been waiting patiently on the line there. Hello, Stephen. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Alex, and good afternoon, listeners. I'd just like to make some observations, if I may, about Julian? Was it Julian?
Julian was on before, yes.
Julian's comments about the Pride group asking for pledges.
Yes.
And he couldn't understand it and thought it was a strange way of doing things. However, I think what we've got to look at is the wider context of the UK in itself as well. And because on the Isle of Man, we always do seem to follow whatever happens with there. And heaven forbid, should a reform government be formed, which would displease me greatly, what we've got to look at is the effect that some of these reform councils, where they've took over the councils, have placed discriminatory regulations on their libraries of stopping them advertising any Pride events, giving any funding whatsoever to them, and I would presume it would mean any literature in a library which is of a LGBTQ plus nature is not allowed to be publicised. And are we back to banning books or burning books? And I think this is probably where this has come from. I do not know. I'm not a member of the Pride team, but I do think we've got to look at this in the overall concept of the greater national view that's coming about. And even locally, if you look at some of the comments on the social media threads, they're extremely homophobic towards some people who've made the comments about the pledge. So it's not as straightforward as saying, well, you know, all the law has been changed and what are you grumbling about? It's only a very tiny thread and it hangs by a simple majority in Tynwald and things could change. And and I'm not wanting to put a plug in for this program, but I don't know whether you have watched the current program that's available on Catch Up on Channel 4, which was called Tiptoe.
Tiptoe, the Russell T Davies series, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, and I don't know whether you've watched it. I would thoroughly recommend anybody who's interested to watch it, because it does portray a nastier and harder side that's creeping in to social lives of people.
I think you should also we should also state that the ending of it is harrowing. It really is.
It is.
You'd have to prepare yourself.
It is harrowing, but it's believable that a group of people sitting around drinking could end up carrying out that. So I do think that when Pride is asking for to support to be known now of where our elected representatives would place their support, I don't see anything wrong with that, because that's the nature of democracy. But I do think that for anybody who thinks that everything in the world is rosy, it's not. And maybe the laws have been changed, but hearts and minds haven't changed completely.
In terms of that, Stephen, because this opens a bit of a slightly bigger conversation, what's your thoughts on why hearts and minds haven't been opened completely? Because you do feel that the world is going less liberal, and you could say it's a pendulum swing in terms of ideologies and political ideologies, that we went through a period where the world was very, very liberal. I'm saying the Western world here, obviously. And there seems to be an undercurrent swinging the other way. Do you think it's purely a political swing? Do you think that social media and everyone's access to basically vitriolic opinion at the touch of your fingers on the end of your phone is driving this?
Well, I think some things are that it's easy to make comments on social media without thought or thinking, should I post this? Because social media is the Wild West. It has very little regulation to it. And I think the other big worry is you get people such as Elon Musk, who has unlimited wealth. His mind has a particular track, and that is to be very right-wing. We've got a rise of populism in America, which with Trump. We've got a rise in populism. He's saying the right things, and he's blaming the immigrants for the problems of the United Kingdom. And I think at the same time, minority groups could easily become targeted for the problems of our countries. So I think it's a combination of all these things. And of course, the other thing is cynicism creeps in, where people say, oh, they're all the same and they're only in it for what they can get. Now, I don't believe that. I think everyone goes into politics hoping to do the best, but some people go into politics and they've got diametrically opposed views to what you've got. So we've got to remember that not everybody supports Western liberal democracies. And as I say, populism is a very bad thing. It doesn't examine the issues completely. It appeals to people's darker base nature without giving it good thoughts. And I think this is why we've got to make sure with our own Tynwald everything is completely looked at by committees and thoroughly investigated. Any law that we do should be well thought out and well cross-examined, I suppose is the word, to make sure it's fit for purpose. Yes, populism.
I was going to say very quickly then, Stephen, do you feel that populism is going to possibly rear its head in this election campaign over the next couple of months?
Well, I hope it doesn't, and I hope it's that's one of the things that we need good explanations by MHKs who got experience, who are intending to stand again, to make sure they explain all the issues that are of concern to the island. I think it's definitely down to people with experience to explain things properly in language that the public can understand. And when others make populist claims that they're debunked and showing up for the untruths that they are.
Lovely. Thank you, Stephen. And thank you very much for your call. Really appreciate that. Cheers. Well, there's Stephen's point. Thank you very much to a few people who are texting as well. Ricky says, how binding is the equality pledge, the Pride pledge for MHKs meant to be? Is it legally enforceable? In Ricky's view, it seems unnecessary to me. We're a very liberal community. Do we really need a pledge like this? And should similar pledges be introduced for every group? Well, you heard Stephen's comments there. That would answer your question there. Also, it would be good, says Texter 511, for MHKs to visit local GP surgeries to see how they're doing. Thank you very much for your comments over the last hour. Thank you to my producer, Chris Quirk. Beth Espy's up next with 1 to 3. Have a great day.